if you don't share the story, people will never hear the message. You're cheating people of hope. It's all imposter syndrome. So when do you launch the podcast? Trenton has been part of Movement Makers, my program, for over a year now. It's been a year of Movement Makers. And so to celebrate, we're going to do another IG Live together. And the theme is however I can help Trenton. So what do you got, man? How can I help?
Well, I sent Sandra my talking points. One of the two things that I've been working on quietly, but with some of the movie makers as accountability partners, is a podcast or a talk show. Mm-hmm. And then coming up with my own recipe for success, and like how to create content, like how to coach and how to do all those type of things. So like I guess we can take it however you want to like start it off first.
You tell me where do you want to start? And that's where we start.
Okay, so like for me, the biggest thing for me was the recipe for success. Mm-hmm. Because I went through Built to Serve. I read it cover to cover, and one of the biggest things that I keep coming back to is like my recipe for success, because I started to ask myself like, okay, at certain points, I did certain things to get out of certain pain points, mm-hmm. but it's hard to like solidify like, oh, what is that one thing that's like a repeated thing that kind of helped me to get to where I'm at in like my entrepreneurial journey. And one of the biggest things for me was the idea of like, okay, I love to read books. One of the biggest things for me is that I read books that solves like a certain problem that I'm facing, like mm-hmm. for like relationships and stuff like that, or business and everything like that. And one of the big things that I do is I read to teach it, but like I have like this like, how would you say, like imposter syndrome, because it's not my work that I'm teaching, it's like someone else's work. And I feel like I don't want to teach it because it's not mine. But I know that certain people, including you, like they just take what they learn and share what they learn to the masses. So it's like, is it that simple, or is it like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know, like, I guess like I'm having like that identity imposter syndrome. Like, oh, is it okay to share this work with people? Because it's like, this is what I've learned, but I didn't make this up. I didn't come up with this type of thing. You know?
Yeah. So we'll get to that first. What is the pain? Like, who did Trenton used to be that you don't want to go back to? Who are the kinds of people that you want to be helping?
So like for me, the biggest pain like that I constantly like came up with most of the time, I thought it was haters, but technically it's not really haters because no one else is coming into my circle saying, hey, you suck. Mm-hmm. It's mostly me saying, hey, you suck. Mm-hmm. And the reason why I'm saying that it's solely because it's like I haven't done the work, or I haven't like done enough to like prove that I can coach, or I can be an entrepreneur, those type of things, right? So like helping that pain point of like not feeling like I'm good enough boils down to like, oh, am I the person that I say I am? And if I'm doing the work that I say I am, will someone think that I'm a fraud? Because like I don't have everything figured out. I can't get you from point A to point Z. I can help you get from point A to 8.5. You know, like that's those type of things. But I feel like that's like too small, or like I'm not doing enough, if that makes sense.
So what did you come up with as your who?
As my who? My who is hope.
Hope.
Yeah.
I like it, dude. It's interesting. So, you know, the biggest pain that you went through was this feeling of, imposter syndrome and not feeling good enough. And who are you? And the question at the top is the same question. It's like, hey, if I'm sharing somebody else's stuff, I have imposter syndrome and I don't feel good enough, and who am I? So it'll continue to show up in your life just on bigger stages. It's probably partly why you haven't actually launched the podcast yet, because it's still the same of, well, who am I to have a podcast? And there's so many great podcasts out there. I think that's great. You know, I think the way through is hope in yourself and then giving hope to others. And every time you conquer one of them, every time you go through one of them, every time you launch, every time you do it scared, it gives hope to somebody else that maybe they can do their thing too, whether it's launch a podcast or ask that girl out or do their clothing brand or whatever the thing is that they want to do. So I love it. Like you're gonna keep facing the barrier, but every time you find yourself feeling imposter syndrome, you have to act. you have to go through, you have to do, because that will be the number one thing that keeps holding you back from the next level in your life. The way through sharing other people's things, but now like tactical, back to your question. One, you can always give credit, right? Like if reading books has been the thing that's really helped you, if you're going to share an idea from Built to Serve, you don't have to say, and I came up with this great idea because I'm the best, Trenton Jones, look at me, right? You say, hey, I read this great book from Evan Carmichael called Built to Serve, and here's what I took from it. And you share the pieces that resonated with you, and you don't worry about sharing the stuff that you didn't resonate with or didn't stick as much. And same thing for any other book that you read or any video you watch or any other resource you're sharing. If you're taking something from Oprah or Elon Musk or whoever, give them credit. And what you'll find, though, as you start sharing more, you'll also find your own style and your own rhythm. And right now, maybe 98% of what you're sharing is going to be other people's ideas, but mixed in a way that Trenton is sharing what he liked about it. And 2% might be like original Trenton stuff. But as you keep doing it and as you keep helping, as you keep serving, that number is going to start to evolve. Where it becomes 5% Trenton and then 7% and then 12% and then 28%. And maybe it doesn't have to even get to 100%. Like maybe I still love sharing messages from other people that I've learned from. I never wanted to be 100% Evan. I like sharing other people's messages as part of it. That's why, Gary Vee called me the content DJ that inspires people. I had the exact same thing where I would say, well, who cares about my story? Why do you want to hear me? I'm sharing all of these great people. Who cares about Evan Carmichael? But in sharing your story, it actually gives hope to other people. So for you, starting a podcast is a big deal. There's a lot of fears and insecurities and imposter syndrome. And what if people listen to it? And what if nobody listens to it? Yeah. They're both problems. So leaning in on, for some people, starting a podcast is super easy. For some people, it's like, oh yeah, I just started a podcast. And they don't get all of the 18,000 hurdles that you put in front of yourself before starting it. That's fine. All the people who are holding themselves back and procrastinating and don't feel like they have any hope, they'll resonate with you a lot more than the person who just started it because they don't feel like they connect to that person. But in hearing all of your worries and insecurities and then still having the hope to go and do it, having the strength and courage to go and actually do it is the thing that then inspires people to listen as well as inspires them to then make some kind of change in their life.
Yeah.
How does that sit with you?
I totally agree. Cause I did this, I was listening to a podcast, and one of the biggest things that keeps reoccurring was just being a person of value and stop being so in your own head of getting in your own way. And one of the biggest things for me is that I tell my friends that, but then it's are you really doing it yourself? You know what I mean? So I definitely agree with you on acting. When it's the moment that I don't have hope, that's when I need to have hope and just act. Because I did an experiment with myself and I was like, okay, these are some of the things that I've been trying to do. I did it. It was fun. For example, going on IG Live and talking with some of the movie makers, I was like, oh, I kind of like this format. I like having guests on and just sharing ideas and sharing what they know. And I'm like, okay, that's more fun. That's more of my alley. So it's how can I do more of that, but then make a business out of it? Because one of the things that I realized was that desperation for money made me the worst entrepreneur ever. Because it's not being a person of value. It's more of being just a person, oh, how can I make money from someone? Mm-hmm. So I think that I resonate a lot with what you're saying. And it's you can always give credit because that's what I mostly do. Because I share books. I bought 3 books for Built to Serve and I gave 2 of them away because I'm you need to read this book, because if you're trying to be a thought leader in whatever field you're trying to be in, you need to have some of these principles in there. And instead of me teaching you what I know or teaching you from what it is, this is what helped me. And like, that's kind of how I spread the message of like different books and stuff like that. Because like, I want you to have ownership of your own education, not just like me being the person that just spoon feeds you those type of things, you know? So yeah, it's still well with me.
So when do you launch the podcast?
So basically, I want to say the podcast launched today because this is what I'm doing now. Where I'm talking to people and this is what I'm sharing. I gave myself a time frame to have all the bells and whistles of like my first episodes being recorded and stuff done by tomorrow, which is June 1st, but that didn't happen. So I would definitely say it will be launching this month of June.
So what's the holdup? Like what needs to happen before you can launch your episode?
Well, first, like it was, I guess like for me, it was like, I want to like put it on like certain platforms, but then I'm like, okay, do I need to put all this money into starting this podcast, or should I just start it from ground zero from IG Live and just build up from that point? So that's where I'm like, okay, do I want to be serious about it, or do I want to just like test my idea first and then put money towards it? So that's like where I was at with it mainly.
It's just step one, dude, right? I mean, you might evolve to have fancy gear and everything else, but step one is just getting, like, if I'm you, I release this as my episode 1.
Okay.
And then do an IG Live tomorrow with somebody and turn that into another podcast. And as you start to get your feet wet and you get a bit of flow on how things work and you start seeing the return, then yeah, next step is get a microphone. But you don't need a lot. You don't need thousands of dollars to have gear to launch a podcast.
Yeah. And that's the trap that I was falling into a little bit. I was like, oh, I gotta get the mic first, and then I have to like get the software, and then I have to like, do all this. Like,
dude, it's all imposter syndrome. It's all the looking at all these other podcasts and feel like, oh wow, I need to be like that for people to. It's like, no, dude, you just need to ask great questions, get your story out there. Expect nobody to listen or watch to the first episodes anyway.
Yeah. And
just like anytime you find yourself overthinking like that, you just got to do it. Like get upset with yourself and say, I'm doing it. I'm launching it. Yeah. Right. When I did my first podcast with Mark, I had a night, I was driving through a desert in Texas and I called up Mark and I said, we're going to do a podcast. He's like, okay, I'm down. When do we start? Like, well, we start tonight. What do you mean, when do we start? Like, when I'm back from my tour in a month and a half? No way. We start tonight. As soon as I get to my Airbnb and I have decent internet, that's when we start. I was like, well, what's the theme and what are the questions and what are we talking about? Like, I don't know. Be there in like 2 hours. You got 2 hours to figure that out. Let's go. And we filmed our first episode and we did it every week for, 3 years or something. And I think we maybe missed 1 or 2 weeks in that whole time. Just, it's not always perfect. It's not always pretty. But the thing that people care most about is the stories. So you leaning in on whatever's on your mind at the moment and you being able to pull out information from people. If I'm you, I'd look at 2 different paths. You want to have somebody else on the show with you, right? To make it easier, conversations.
Well, yeah, like to just like have like be like, instead of hearing my own story, like hear other people's stories too. So it's like a hybrid between like I share what I'm learning and like I'm teaching like other people how to think. Because one of the biggest thing for the theme of the podcast was how to see problems as opportunities, because that's kind of what I've done my whole life, where it's like, oh, this is an obstacle, this is an opportunity to solve that obstacle. So like teaching on that particular thing and then having guests to basically share that same type of like story or like insights of like, how does that look for them?
And the teaching is going to be you just talking direct, or you're going to have somebody on that you want to coach? What do you want to do with the teaching part?
The teaching part, it will mainly, like starting out, mostly be direct, like via IG Live and stuff like that. And then eventually over time, I would love to like have people come on and like, we can workshop through some of those things, because I feel like that's when I'm in like my most, I guess, zone of genius, when I'm workshopping out like the problem, or the problem and turning into opportunity.
How did you what is hope? Did you do the credo exercise?
Yeah, I did.
What did you break it down to?
Self-acceptance, progress, and then courage.
I love it, dude. You need all three of them. Like you just said, I'm going to write that down. Self-acceptance, progress, and courage.
Yeah.
See if I can remember that. You just said when you're coaching people and helping them, that's your zone of genius. Right? That's what you just said. That's my zone. But the sentence before that was, I'm going to wait. I'm going to wait to get some stuff done before what? Before you step into your zone of genius? We got to go. We got a zone of genius right now. I'm writing this down. Hope. Yeah. Hope equals self-acceptance, progress and
courage.
Yeah. Okay. So you need to just start doing the coaching part right now. Why not do it? It's because you don't accept yourself yet, and you don't have enough courage.
Yeah.
You're waiting for something to happen, some sign. Trenton, this is your sign. It's time for some progress. Yeah. So if I'm you, I look at 3 different kinds of shows. You have the coaching shows, you have the conversation shows, and then you have the mentorship shows. So like coaching is you're coaching other people. I'm going to write it down too. Coaching. 1 time a week, you're coaching people. And you can DM anybody who follows you. You can reach out to anybody who you already know in your circle. You can, anybody who's on an email list, like anybody. People who are commenting on people commenting on my Instagram feeds and say, hey, I'd love to do a coaching session with you, help you for free on Instagram Live. Like you're actively looking for 1 person a week to coach, train, and help. Second is conversations. And that's you with a peer. You're not coaching. You're not being coached, but you're having conversation. You're pulling out their story. And that could be people, movement makers. That could be other people, other friends in your circle, somebody who you want to have a conversation with and tell their story. And it still revolves around hope and all of these things. Like how did they accept themselves? When did they have courage? What are they trying to make progress on right now? Where do they still need hope in their life today? And you're pulling out these stories from them and injecting your own Trenton stories as well to see how it resonates with you. And then the last one is the interviews or the mentorship, where you're going to bring people on who you're going to be coached by. So like this is a mentoring call where you bring on somebody, you think, what am I struggling with right now? And then who can help me with this? And then you turn that into an episode where people can see what goes on behind the scenes. I love, and I think this will resonate a lot with you, I love the idea of pulling back the curtain and showing what goes on and the insecurities and the questions and the struggles that you're still facing, and showing that you're willing to go off and ask for help and not just face this challenge alone because you're tired of facing the challenge alone. And I'm not perfect, so you can watch me be imperfect, but I'm going to try and go get mine. Yeah. And I'm willing to learn from people. I try to do each one of those once a week. So you have a 3 times a week show. You're coaching somebody once a week. You're having conversations with somebody once a week. And you're learning from somebody once a week, where you're bringing the problem. Like coaching is they're bringing a problem to you and you're helping them. Mm. And then the mentorship is you're bringing a problem and they're helping you.
Yeah. And then with the conversation, it's like, oh, this is like how other people are solving it. So it's like how I see it's like a trifecta effect. It's like, oh, I'm coaching, I'm being coached or being helped. And then introducing other people to other stories that resonate with them is still spreading hope and helping other people.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's what that looks like in my head.
Like I love it, dude. I love it. I think it's great. I think it's a perfect fit. who in Movement Makers have you done an IG live with, or you might ask to be a guest on your show for conversation?
I've done one with Susie, Angela, and then Christina, and then I did one with Rose. But like that was way back in January, I think.
Okay.
Maybe.
All the women in the group.
Yeah.
All the women in the group. Trenton wants all the women in the group. Okay. So I mean,
that's most of my demographic on that, like IG Live on my insights is mostly like women, and I'm like, okay, that's a weird dichotomy, but I mean, it makes sense.
Well, here's the thing though, like that I think women will more easily fall into the category if you're talking about hope, but I think there's actually you can make it cool to talk about hope. Yeah. You can make it cool to talk about like self-acceptance is. Women have a much easier time talking about those things than guys do, but you could be the guy who then makes it okay to talk about self-acceptance and what that looks like. Yeah. Right. Yeah. I think courage guys would lean in more like rah, courage and hard. But I think that could be a good fit for you. So if you have Angela come back on and you're talking about every conversation revolves around hope, self-acceptance, courage, and progress and whatever they went through or are currently going through. And the point isn't for you to coach them or them to coach you. It's just to have a conversation to get their story out in a way that then hopefully inspires the people who are watching as well.
Yeah.
Instagram Live, schedule them out, post this week.
Got you. This is my first episode, so
episode 1, baby, it's in the books.
Yeah, and that was the main thing that I was like taking away because it's like. I like what I tell people that the masterminds that I'm a part of. I'm like I'm around some dope people, and I want people to see like like the trend that you see now has not like 5 years ago. Like this was not a thing. Like I wasn't like this person of personal growth and personal development. It's like this is like how I open my doors to people, and this is like all the opportunities. Like talking to you on IG Live and like just like being around different like-minded people. I feel like. That's what saved me from giving up a lot of other times. Because I don't know if Christina's on here, but like she knows that there's some points where I'm like, I can't do this. I gotta quit. But then she's like, no, because I didn't let you quit. So it's just like those type of things. So shout out to Christina. That's my accountability partner. Yeah, for sure. I will budget. I'm actually gonna work on this today. I already have like 3 people that I can have conversations with. So this will be like for mentoring, like. How would reach out to other people as well that I'm being mentored by as well, or just share the behind the scenes of that?
No, like I would love to see you actually being mentored.
Okay.
To say, hey, because when you're in coaching mode, you have a lot more confidence because you're the guy who's leading. When you're in coachee mode, mentee mode, there's a lot more doubt, insecurities, and like I don't know, and struggles and a good coach will say, no, Trenton, you're not waiting 3 months to get this done. You're going to do it today. Come on, man. Let's a little more self-acceptance, courage, and progress. But it could be for any area. Like if there's relationships, and there's somebody who you really respect on that front. It's just basically you're bringing a problem. You're bringing a solution when you're coaching. You're bringing an inquisitive mind when you're doing conversations, and then you're bringing a problem when you're going to be coached. So even some of the people who are in the conversations might be great mentors for you as well, but it's just a different vibe showing up. It's like, okay, this episode, we're going to work on my stuff. Can you help me work through some things that I'm thinking about? And just making that public instead of keeping it to
behind closed doors.
Yeah, because people don't see. You've done 4 posts total on Instagram, Chinton. We need to get your content out there. Yeah. Because people will look to you and say, man, I totally, people are already putting it down in the chat. Like they resonate with you and they see themselves in you. But if you don't share the story, people will never hear the message. You're cheating people of hope. Yeah. So, just make a list of the things that you want to learn, where you feel like you're struggling and would love some guidance or help. Sometimes even just having the conversation is helpful. Just to hear you say the words out loud, and then you can catch yourself and say, oh, man, what did I just said that? You know how I would tell myself, that was my friend, how I would tell them to do things, right? Yeah. Just sometimes when you say it out loud, it sounds ridiculous enough that you then want to make a change. Yeah, I love it. And then just start this week. You got your first episode. Now you need someone to coach and you need someone to have a conversation with.
Gotcha.
And you'll literally figure it out as you go. Like you just start doing Instagram lives. And then as you make progress, you'll figure out the gear and everything else. But you have enough to start.
Yeah.
Already.
Cell phone.
You got a cell phone, dude. You can start. That's it. And what that does is give hope to other people, because what's your message going to be? Do you want people who watch you to say, oh, well, Trenton only started when he had all of this perfect stuff going, so I guess I can't start on my life until I get it all perfect too, right? That's not your message. Your message is progress. It's not self-acceptance, perfection, and courage. It's self-acceptance, progress, and courage.
Yeah.
And progress comes from the doing.
Got you. Awesome. Yeah. This was great, because like I don't know, I was in a rut, so like having a mentor like this is something that I always needed. So thank you.
Cool, man.
I appreciate it so much. That's all the questions that I have. I find it funny that I come in thinking I'm coming in to like solve like my content creation problem, but like actually no, it was my who problem. I think you were saying like most of the time your who is also your enemy at times, because you're not doing enough of like
always is, dude. Yeah,
thing.
always is. Like lack of belief is the next thing for me. To hit the next level of my life is still I don't believe that I can. So you're going to always bump up against lack of hope and imposter syndrome for the next thing. The trick is just catching it. Here it is again. It's showing up again. Okay, Trenton, you know what we got to do? We got to self-accept. We got to make some progress, and we got to have courage. And just that self-reminder can give you the energy you need to just build the momentum, because that's the only thing that's missing. You got the heart, the love, the message, the desire to serve and do well. The only thing that's missing is momentum.
All right.
Love you, man. Go make it.
Right.
We'll see you soon.
If you want to see another awesome one-on-one I did with an entrepreneur just like you, check out the video right there next to me. I think you'll enjoy it. Continue to believe, and I'll see you there.
I love it, dude. That's believe.
How do you just break through that whole imposter syndrome like mindset?
And what I would look for, I think this is really important.